Hey guys, today we're going to talk about 3 different tips to help you improve your Koth gameplay. The first thing we're going to talk about is when should you play Sim on Koth maps. Second thing we're going to talk about is when you have these like really long fights that go on. You're not sure what to do, like are you winning, are you losing, like is this turnable? We're going to talk about those. And the last thing we're going to talk about is that when you have point control and the enemy team has an ult advantage, how you can sort of approach that. So let's get started. So when we're talking about Sim, especially in Koth maps, it's important to understand a few things. The first thing is understanding when you actually take the fight on point, what is the distance between the teams? Is the fight going to happen right away? If the fight is going to happen right away, aka it's a close fight, you need to make sure that one of your DPS is some type of range DPS and has mobility. For instance, if you look right over here, we'll notice that Atlanta is playing Sim and Echo, whereas London is playing Mei and Sojourn. In this situation, Backbone does not play Sim. Why? Mei does not have mobility, as well as Mei is needed in the front line. So, because Sojourn is a long-range DPS, it makes sense for Sojourn to be able to be Sim, plus Sojourn has a slide, so Sojourn's able to get back fast. In some of the previous metas, such as maybe like metas like 6-man that include Reaper, it was risky to always have your Reaper play Sim. Why? Because your Reaper might come late, and if the fight happened instantly, your Reaper would be late, and then your tanks wouldn't have the Reaper to help support them. So, in summary, when there's a close fight is happening, you need to make sure that your range DPS is going Sim, or someone who has a lot of mobility like Tracer. If you don't have a range DPS or someone who has a lot of mobility, then it's really important that you don't use Sim at all. If it's far, like a map like Nepal Sanctum, then it doesn't really matter. It's totally okay, you can go Sim, because the fight's not going to happen anyway. So let's watch this and sort of see an example here. So, as we watch this, you'll notice that Atlanta chooses a more spam-based composition, whereas London sort of approaches a more brawl-based composition. Atlanta does try and go to point first, just like London, because when you're playing Sim, you normally have 2 objectives. The idea first is to be able to take valuable map space, being either like take a choke or maybe take successful angles and space on the map. So Atlanta tries to take space on the map. Unfortunately, a little bit hard when they're playing into a Mei, but because they have a better spam-based composition, they're able to sort of play slow and take angles. So right over here, you can see Speedly poking. He looks to try and like go a little bit more aggressive. See Sparker out, almost gets Sparker. Unfortunately, back when it's a really nice right click. However, just because of this, it's not over yet. Trades can still happen. London pushes a little bit aggressive. And right over here, you'll see that Kai hits a headshot. And then after this, now they're in a better situation because Mei has no wall, Mei had no cryo. They push forward and they end up sort of winning the fight. So hopefully this makes sense. But this is sort of when you want to be thinking about Sim, is make sure that you're always having a ranged DPS go or someone with mobility. If the fight's going to happen right away, then really make sure that the DPS can actually be there for the fight. The next thing I want to talk about is fights that you're just not sure, like, you know, it's so crazy. Like, you killed somebody, they killed you, like, is it still winnable? And whenever you play Koth, it's really important to understand that spawn distances from your spawn to point and their spawn to point is actually the same. So this is important. Why? Well, when you have heroes like with mobility and you have heroes with no mobility, this can change how fast people get back. So let's say, for instance, you kill, let's say, Kellen. Or better example, you kill Ana. So Kai kills Mungbong, and let's say now New York ends up killing Nero, and they're right next to each other. They both killed, the same time. Well, because Nero's Tracer, Nero's inherently going to come back faster before New York's Ana will. And that makes a really big impact, because now what will end up happening is, sure, these people die instantly and it's a 4v4, but later in the fight, it's actually going to end up being a 5v4 because Nero will get back first and they'll have an advantage. So during that time, Atlanta might just play slow, they might play to live, they might play to not do anything crazy. It'll make a little bit more sense with an example. So let's sort of see how Atlanta approaches this in this fight versus New York. So if you look at this right now, it's about equal sort of in ult economy. I'd say Atlanta's actually up a little bit. Yaki goes for a pulse here, hits a really nice pulse. Atlanta's now down 1. Now, again, because of this, it's not over. You can always get trades. And if you notice right over here, Atlanta backs up because they have point control. They don't have to rush anything. They can bait New York Excelsior to come up a little bit and then look to sort of abuse or like punish a mistake. They're poking. They look for a beat, which now affords a mirror beat. They look to push in. Hawk unfortunately dies. Now, right now, they're down 2. But remember about spawn distance. And Kai will probably be back very fast. So they're down 2. Now, notice there's a pick here. Kai got back, killed Flora. So now, again, they're down 1. And again, they're going to be down 2 because now UV dies. And now another trade comes in, and now New York's Lucio dies, so now they're down 1. Now, things to keep in mind, UV died, that sort of sucks, and before that, Hawk died. Hawk is Doomfist. Hawk comes back fast. Flora died, Lucio died, those people come back relatively fast too. So, technically, it's a little bit in New York's advantage, but it's still winnable. And this is where it's really important to understand that, like, hey, we still have map control, or we still have point control, we can still win this. And now look, the Doomfist is already back, and even though they were down, now they end up being up. And unfortunately, Nero gets slept here, doesn't die instantly, but ends up dying here. And you can see this fight just keeps going. Then Hawk gets a kill, and then you can just keep watching. This fight goes on for quite a while, and believe it or not, at the end, Atlanta ends up actually winning this fight. So what I want you to understand and take from this is that when you're playing Koth maps, fights are 100% winnable. And you need to understand that just because you got 1 kill doesn't mean the fight's over yet. The enemy team can trade, and if the fight goes for a while and if they trade, their spawn might come back late, like faster than yours, and because of that, they'll have an advantage. So keep in mind, essentially, mobility. Understand the fact that, hey, they have mobile heroes, I don't have mobile heroes. Or, opposite, we have mobile heroes and they don't have mobile heroes, hence, when we get trades, we have an advantage. Last topic I want to talk about is very simple. It's nothing really complicated, and I think these examples show it pretty well. Essentially, if you have point control and the enemy team has to push into you, because that's how Koth works, and the enemy team has an ult advantage, there are 2 general ways to approach this. The first way is be hyper aggressive and try and catch the enemy off guard, and have good pressure on the enemy team based off who has ultimates. You'll see right over here. So when we look at this, we can see Hawk's got his ult, Sparker and Hottie got his ult. Now, you can notice immediately who are they pressuring. They're pressuring Hottie a lot. Why? Because Hottie won't be able to ult now. And that sort of puts London in a weird spot because they had an ult advantage, but they can't really use it because Hottie's low, because if he does, he just dies instantly. So because of the good target priority here by Atlanta, and by pressuring Hottie, then they go really aggressive here, and they force a really fast brawl, and they looked in, and then they sort of just clean it up. And they essentially end up winning a fight that, even though they were down on ult, they ended up winning it. By being proactive, having a good engagement zone, as well as understanding good target focus. The last example I want to talk about is the complete opposite. In that example there, you sort of saw like Atlanta playing really fast, but you don't always have to play fast. You can also play slow. And in the earlier example you saw in New York, when Atlanta was down 1, you saw them actually back up a little bit. Well, here you're going to see an example of someone just backing up slow from the start of the fight. Imagine these Reinhardts are Junker Queen, and imagine the soldiers or Sojourn, doesn't matter. And the red team is recontesting and has a massive ult advantage. In this situation, a lot of teams would maybe just hold this choke really hard and be like, ha ha ha, you can't get in here, and I'm gonna make it really hard for you. But what you could just do is, most teams when they attack or try and push back in, they use an ult to take space, such as maybe Beat, Rally, maybe Blade, or something like that, or Sojourn ult. As soon as that ult happens, essentially all you're gonna do is you're gonna take these 3 people and just back up and give a little bit of space. Maybe back up here, maybe back up here. And the idea for this is to, yes, let the enemy team take some of point. Not necessarily maybe let them cap, maybe don't let them cap. But the idea is to let them use an ult just to take space and you use nothing. While this happens, you build your ults, and then when you have an actual advantage, then you're able to push back in with maybe you have an ult advantage now, or you have an ult that's important, or maybe you get someone low, or maybe you're angling them really hard and they didn't expect that, and you sort of get someone low in 4 CDs, and then you're able to get a kill.